thank you. So I'm April Urban, and this is Charlie Gibbons. I'm the Instructional Services and Scholarly Communications Librarian at UAH, and Charlie is our digital archivist. So an overview of our presentation, we're going to talk about the key steps to adopting digital commons to launch an IR at a medium-sized, STEM-heavy, research-intensive four-year university. We'll talk about how a small scholarly communications initiative can overcome obstacles and grow scholarly communication efforts and awareness. And we'll talk about best practices for promoting a culture of open access, OER, and open data. So one question I have for all of you, and I feel like a lot of the discussion has already touched on this, is challenges that you faced in building your scholarly communications program. So just in the interest of time, I'd really love to discuss this during the Q&A. And I hope this is something that you all can think about while we're presenting. So Charlie will present on the background.
All right. So the University of Alabama in Huntsville is located in Huntsville, Alabama. So Huntsville is the home to Redstone Arsenal and Marshall Space Flight Center. If y'all have been following the news with NASA recently, Marshall Space Flight Center is responsible for the launch vehicle system that took Artemis 2 up to orbit around the moon. So Huntsville is very aerospace defense centric. Tons of defense contractors and tech companies in town as well. And of course, we have the U.S. Space and Rocket Center, which is the home of Space Camp. So this is the context in which UAH is operating. So UAH is very STEM heavy and focused on ties with the aerospace and defense industry. UAH was founded as an extension center of the University of Alabama in 1950. We ended up getting funding from the state legislature to open a research institute, which happened in 1964. And then we became an autonomous university within the University of Alabama system in 1969. So we are also a very young school. But since then, we have grown to include 17 research centers and laboratories, again, very aerospace and defense centric. And we have an annual output of our annual research expenditures of around $169 million. Of course, it fluctuates from year to year. We have been an R1 institution in the past, but with Carnegie restructuring those designations, we're now an R2. So we've got, tons of data coming out of UAH, tons of research going on. We really needed an institutional repository. But when I got there, we didn't have a real IR. We had Content DM, which is an OCLC product, which is great for some things. It is not great as an IR. So the library was really kind of stuck in the past. And so one of the things that we did the first few years that I was at UAH, late 2010s, early 2020s, was figuring out where we needed to go with the IR. Because we had ETDs and research content in our instance of Content DM, but it was this weird siloed site that students and faculty couldn't figure out how to get to. It was not really connected to the library website at all. It was very strange. It led to kind of an erosion of goodwill with faculty in some regards, because they were like, oh, why would I put my stuff in there? It's just going to go in this weird site that nobody can find. So we started working on figuring out how to build a real institutional repository. And so it was a combination of the library director and about, I think, 3 or 4 faculty librarians and a couple of staff. So reference folks, electronic resources folks, our head cataloger, archives and special collections. We really kind of led the way. I am the institutional repository manager as well as digital archivist. And we also pulled in our Office of Marketing and Communications, because of course we want to stay on brand, on message for the institution. We looked at a number of different solutions for the IR, including an Ex Libris product, open source solutions, but ultimately we went with Digital Commons because of what other folks have said here today, the level of service that goes with Digital Commons, also the ubiquity of Digital Commons, and how, we're like, oh, if we have Digital Commons, we'll be like a real library. And just how, nice it looks, and just all of the discoverability and interoperability, and just, how we could make it the real hub of UAH, whereas Content DM definitely was not. So we made our decision on Digital Commons. So how did we grow this? So we named our IR Lewis after M. Lewis Salmon, who our library is named after. Also informally stands for Library of Unique Institutional Scholarship. Yes. So the first steps that we took were migrating the existing student scholarship from our legacy platforms, namely Content DM. So we had hundreds, I want to say maybe we had like a total of like 2,000 or 3,000 items that we could bring over. And it took me and like a whole team of students to migrate this stuff, because the metadata also had to be revised. But we had student research posters, we had honors capstone projects, we had ETDs, and this really provided a good base for scholarly content in the IR. So we were able to launch it with a lot of stuff, and a lot of stuff that we knew people would use. And to do this, we kind of already had some existing campus relationships that we really have heavily relied on for help clarifying some of the information about this content, to add metadata. And we still work with these folks. So our Office of Undergraduate Research have been working with them this whole time. They're essential for getting our student research posters, honors capstones into Lewis. And of course, the graduate school, who works with our head cataloger on our ETDs. And so these are, basically the core of what we do in Lewis. These people are key collaborators. But you'll notice all of the things that I have mentioned so far, they're very student-centric. we really needed a scholarly communications program, and we really needed to target faculty and their research. So April is going to talk about that.
Yeah, so I joined the Selman Library as the Scholarly Communications Librarian in October 24. So that was about a year and a half ago. Since I've joined, I've initiated new collections on Lewis, our OER collection and our open data collection. So I'm really proud of accomplishing that in just a year and a half. Like, there was nothing there before. I think a lot of faculty don't quite understand how the institutional repository can serve their research needs. So it's been an ongoing process, but again, I'm proud to have those collections up. And one big thing that's helped a lot is that I sought feedback on building scholarly communications programming from librarian colleagues at the University of Alabama in Birmingham. So my background is mainly in OER and open access. I don't know much about open data. My PhD is in English, so some of the scientific data stuff basically seems like a foreign language to me. So it was really helpful to talk to the UAB folks. They have an open data librarian who has a doctorate in biology. So getting her perspective on how to organize open data and how that's different than organizing like scholarly articles or OER was really helpful. UAB, they have a very robust scholarly communications program, and they also use digital commons. But it was really good to hear from them how, it's taken them more than 10 years to build this program. They have a whole scholarly communications office, I think, with 3 or 4 people, while we don't have a dedicated ScholComm team, and it's just the 2 of us. So it was good to hear how it was kind of a period of slow growth at UAB, and I found that really encouraging. So our current challenges and opportunities. So as I've kind of mentioned, the main challenge is introducing the concepts of the institutional repository and scholarly communications to faculty and stakeholders at UAH. So I think a lot of faculty, when I say institutional repository to them, they don't understand what that means. They know it's part of the library, but they also don't quite understand that it's not exactly the same thing as, the library catalog or databases. I also think it's good because it's been used for depositing those student works like Charlie talked about. So I think it's also a bit of a mindset shift for them to think that, it's not just for student works. So part of this has been demystifying open access. So I've reached out to various stakeholders on campus who, are interested in publications, mainly graduate students and faculty. One thing I've had to kind of touch on is that some faculty, I would say especially in engineering, are very suspicious of open access. They think it's the same thing as predatory publishing, or that, having their works out there on the internet, like, openly available, kind of like, I don't know, they're just very suspicious of it. So part of the process has been explaining to them that, Lewis is good because it makes your research discoverable. You can assign a license to it. And it increases your citation impact. The other big challenge, and I feel like other people here can probably relate to this, is that we're pretty short-staffed when it comes to scholarly communications. I think a lot of the challenges that were in different departments, I'm in reference in instruction, and Charlie is in our archives department. And we don't have a dedicated team. We also have other responsibilities on top of our ScholarComm responsibilities. So sometimes I feel like I have a lot of ideas that I'd like to execute when it comes to growing our collections. But because especially during the academic year, I'm pretty like booked with instruction, that's been slower going than I would have liked. And finally, again, I would love to hear any thoughts anyone has on this. Some faculty have also recently raised the concern about AI scraping OA materials. I think this is probably something that we're going to have to keep responding to as librarians. And I know that DC has some guardrails on there. But again, I think, like I said earlier, faculty have been kind of suspicious, and that adds to it as well. So opportunities, I think someone mentioned earlier how you can, take challenges and change them into opportunities. So I think the fact that this is a new thing at UAH, that does offer a really huge opportunity, especially because we are a very STEM-intensive campus. So we know that those data sets are out there and that it's good for people to share them. So we just need to get the message out that this is something that will benefit them. So I think the one big opportunity here is building relationships with the UAH faculty and using the IR to show the library's value for them as scholars. That's why I'm really happy that we have that open data collection. Right now we have 2 data sets in there, which isn't a ton, but I think it's really good to point to that and show faculty like you can do this as well. Just like in terms of relationship building, I'm trying to identify different points on campus where I can make those connections. So I had a Love Data Week event in February to coincide with International Love Data Week. And the turnout wasn't as high as I hoped for, but the people who were there were really interested in it. A few weeks back, I went to a graduate student poster session, and a graduate student who was there remembered me from the Love Data Week event. She reached out to me to deposit her data set, so that was definitely beneficial because I held that event, and then I went out to that graduate student session. I was able to make that connection. I will say in terms of workflows, both of our open data sets came from people who said, hey, I need to have this deposited in 2 days for my publication. So I think that's something we'll have to work out where you need to tell us in advance because our backgrounds are not in science. We also are asking people to share their descriptions and keywords with us, because I cannot decode what these data sets are about. So I'm hoping we'll kind of figure out better workflows for that. Another great opportunity we've had is that when I came to UAH, the Enhanced Center for Teaching and Learning on campus, they have a whole team of instructional designers who are trained in Creative Commons and have collaborated with faculty to create OER. So they already had OER that were original creations and ready to be shared. So that was a really natural fit where I reached out to them and asked to share their OER texts. And so we already have, I think, 6 or 7 OERs in our collection. So I think it's really good to, collaborate with other units on campus. And that's another good way to make connections. So I think my main goals going forward for this, along with Charlie, are to kind of figure out, maybe we'll put depositing in the hands of the faculty a bit more. I think it's also getting the message out and leveraging those connections and relationships.